This video is going to cover the topic of creating tables from rules. Be sure the date and topic are at the top of your page. The essential question for this video is, how do we create tables and what do they tell us? And remember that rules are like equations, but they're special equations that have two variables. We'll start by looking at this situation. So Molly is going to sign her dog up to run the doggy dash, which will raise some money for the Humane Society. She wants every friend or family member to help her by donating $12 for her dog to run the dash. So we're going to create a rule to show how much money she would raise based on the number of friends who pledged to donate. So as I read this, I'm trying to figure out what I know. So I know that Molly is signing up her dog. She wants her friends to donate $12, and we're trying to figure out the total, how much money she will raise. So it looks like I know that she's getting $12 per friend, right? So that's a multiplier. That's something that's happening for every single friend. The number of friends who donates, we don't know, right? So that's a variable. And I think that's the variable F. I'm going to use an F here. The number of friends, if she gets $12 per friend, that will determine how much money she makes. So the money she makes is going to be our dependent variable, right? The money she makes depends on how many friends donate. So I'm going to write a rule, and I'm going to say that it's $12 for every friend will tell us the amount of money that she'll earn. And from this rule, we're going to create a table, and I'm going to have two labels here in each of my columns. One of the columns is my F, standing for friends, and the other one is M, standing for money. So if 0 people want to help Molly out, right, if she doesn't have any friends who want to donate, then what we would do over here is we would substitute or evaluate what would happen if F was 0. So we'd say, well, 12 times 0, and we know that that would be 0, so the amount of money would be 0. We can do the same thing with 1. So if she had 1 friend who donates, we can evaluate that, and our value of M would be 12, right? And we could kind of continue on this way, substituting and evaluating what we would get as we go along, right? And we don't have to always just go one by one. So I could even say, what if she had 5 friends? And I could test that out. And she had 5 friends, well, 12 times 5 would be 60. And if maybe she had 12 friends who wanted to donate, we'd evaluate that, and the 12 friends would be $144, right? And so this rule is just a nice way to organize our work, right? We can use this table to look at the information for the situation. We'll know that the amount of money Molly raises depends on how many friends donate, and it's a nice quick snapshot to show some information, right? We could show a lot of information with just this one quick table that we make. The next story has Autumn walking 10 feet ahead of Simone for whatever reason. I don't know what that is, but we want to create a rule and table to show how far along Autumn has walked, or how far Autumn has gone. So we know that we're starting by knowing Simone's distance. So I'm going to underline Simone. Simone is our independent variable. Whatever she has walked, we know that we can add 10 feet, and that will tell us how much Autumn has walked. So I'm going to go ahead and box this 10 feet because we'd have to add that on. And that will tell us how far Autumn has walked. So I'm going to write S. I'm going to try and make this not look like a 5. S plus 10 will tell us how far Autumn has walked. And we'll use this to fill out our table. And notice I switched the direction of the table, right? Sometimes they're vertical, sometimes they're horizontal. Either way is fine. But I know if Simone has walked 0 feet, and I have this as my rule, right? I would substitute or evaluate what would happen if I had 0 here. And of course, that would be 10. If Simone has walked 1 foot, and I add 10 to that and evaluate, of course, that would be 11. And I could just do this a few more times, right? If Simone's walked 2 feet, we know that that would give Autumn 12. If Simone has walked 5 feet, and I add 10 to that, and I evaluate it, that would be 15. And let's just do one more. Maybe Simone has walked 13 feet, and if I add 10 to that, it would be 23. So we would put a 13 for Simone and a 23 for Autumn. For our last one, I'm not going to use a story here, but I want to just point out that sometimes rules have 2 steps. But luckily, we can still make a table. I have a table set up here, and I just want to evaluate some values here. So if x is 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, or 10, I want to figure out what y would be. So on the first one, right, if I had 2 times 0, if I replace that with a 0 and add 8, I know, of course, in my order of operations, I would multiply first, and then I would add, and my final answer would be 8. So 8 would go right there. And I can do the same thing with the next one. Right, I would this time evaluate for when it is equal to 1, and I would go ahead and multiply first and then divide. I can do the same thing, right? If I substitute in, oops, excuse me there, that's not what I meant to do. If I substitute in a 2, I'm going to do 2 next, and then add that in, right? I would snow cone and work my way down, and I know that that would be 12, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and pause and fill in the rest of it, and I want you to do the same and see what you get for 3, 5, 8, and 10. How'd you do? Hopefully you were able to figure out that if you evaluate this rule and fill in your table, that when x is 3, y is 14, when x is 5, y is 18, and when x is 10, y is 28, right? And we can kind of keep ourselves organized in that space. All right, here's your turn. So we have a situation where each student needs to run 8 laps around the field. I want you to write a rule and a table to show how many laps will be run by the students all together. So we'll need a rule that you can use, and then I'd like to see a table, and I'll give you some numbers here that you can fill in. So let's do for our table, let's do number of students and the number of laps, and figure out how many laps there would be if there were 0, 1, 2, 5, 10, or 20 students. And so you can fill in all of those empty spots there. So rule and table, please, for your turn. And remember, the essential question was, how do we create tables? And we saw that, of course. And also, what does that tell us, right? And so that tells us a quick snapshot of information about a particular situation. As always, make sure you have your notes and be ready to come to class with any questions you might have.